Welcome, weary traveler, to a journey through the darker corners of paradise. Tonight, we'll explore the mysterious residents who dwell in the shadows of our beloved Animal Crossing villages. These are not the cheerful neighbors you might expect, but creatures whose smiles hide secrets, whose words carry whispers of the unknown, and whose presence reminds us that even in the most peaceful places, mystery and unease can take root. So settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind drift as we walk together through moonlit villages where not every resident is quite what they seem. Close your eyes when you're ready, and let's begin. In the quiet corners of every village, where the morning light casts long shadows between the trees and the earth holds secrets older than memory itself, there lives a creature whose very existence challenges our understanding of what it means to be alive. Her name is Coco, and she is perhaps the most enigmatic resident you will ever encounter in your travels through the archipelago of peaceful communities we call home. Coco appears, at first glance, to be a rabbit like any other. She has the soft brown fur and gentle demeanor that characterizes her species, and she moves through the village with the same unhurried grace that marks all of our anthropomorphic neighbors. Yet something about her presence creates a subtle disturbance in the fabric of normalcy, like ripples spreading across still water when no stone has been thrown. It is her face that first draws attention, though perhaps draws is not the correct word. Rather, it is the absence within her face that captures the eye and holds it with a fascination that borders on discomfort. Where other villagers have eyes that sparkle with personality and warmth, Coco possesses only hollow, dark circles that seem to gaze into dimensions beyond our comprehension. Her mouth, too, is nothing more than a void, a perfect circle of darkness that speaks without lips, smiles without expression, and somehow conveys emotion through the very emptiness that defines it. These features, so unsettling in their stark simplicity, are not merely the quirks of an unusual character design. They connect Coco to something far more ancient and mysterious than the cheerful world of village life would initially suggest. Her appearance mirrors that of the Haniwa, those ancient clay figures that were buried alongside the dead in Japan thousands of years ago, guardians meant to protect souls in their journey to the afterlife. The Haniwa were not merely decorative objects, but sacred vessels, created by skilled artisans who understood the delicate balance between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. They were hollow by design, their emptiness serving a purpose that transcended mere artistic expression. Within that hollowness, it was believed, spirits could dwell, finding refuge and purpose in the carefully crafted clay forms that would endure long after flesh had returned to dust. Coco's resemblance to these ancient burial guardians is not coincidental, but deliberate, a connection that becomes even more apparent when one considers her relationship with the mysterious objects known as gyroids. These strange, musical artifacts that players unearth from the soil of their villages share the same hollow-eyed, void-mouthed aesthetic that defines Coco's appearance. They too are reminiscent of Haniwa, those earthen sentinels that once stood watch over burial mounds and sacred spaces. The gyroids themselves represent one of the most puzzling aspects of village life, objects whose origins remain shrouded in mystery despite their ubiquitous presence beneath our feet. They emerge from the earth after rainfall, as if summoned by the moisture that brings life to growing things. Yet they are not alive in any conventional sense. They are artifacts of some forgotten civilization, technological marvels that produce haunting melodies without any visible mechanism or power source. When placed within homes, gyroids create an atmosphere that is simultaneously comforting and unnerving. Their songs, if songs they can truly be called, consist of repetitive patterns that seem to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to something deeper within the human psyche. The sounds they produce are not quite music and not quite machinery, but something that exists in the liminal space between organic and artificial, between the familiar and the utterly alien. Coco's connection to these mysterious objects runs deeper than mere aesthetic similarity. She speaks of them with an understanding that suggests intimate familiarity, as if she shares some fundamental kinship with these hollow, singing vessels. Her dialogue often contains references to emptiness and void, concepts that other villagers rarely contemplate, but which seem to occupy a central place in her worldview. When Coco speaks of the void, she does so not with fear or sadness, but with a kind of peaceful acceptance that is both admirable and deeply unsettling. She talks about emptiness as others might discuss the weather, treating the absence of substance as simply another aspect of existence to be acknowledged and embraced. Her words carry the weight of ancient wisdom, as if she has gazed into the heart of nothingness and found there not despair but a strange form of serenity. The interior of Coco's home reflects this philosophy of meaningful emptiness, where other villagers fill their spaces with colorful furniture and personal mementos that speak to their individual personalities and interests. Coco's dwelling maintains an aesthetic of deliberate minimalism that borders on the austere. Her furniture choices lean toward earth tones and simple designs, creating an atmosphere that feels more like a meditation chamber or sacred shrine than a typical residential space. The few decorative elements she does choose to display often carry subtle references to mortality and the passage of time. Ancient artifacts, weathered stones, and objects that suggest great age populate her carefully curated environment. These items are not morbid or frightening, but rather serve as gentle reminders of the cycles that govern all existence, the endless dance between creation and dissolution that underlies the apparent permanence of our village life. Visitors to Coco's home often report a sense of profound tranquility that seems to emanate from the very walls themselves. The space possesses a quality of timelessness, as if moments spent within its confines exist outside the normal flow of temporal experience. Conversations held in her presence take on a meditative quality, with pauses that feel natural and meaningful rather than awkward or uncomfortable. This temporal distortion, subtle though it may be, suggests that Coco's connection to ancient burial traditions goes beyond mere visual resemblance. Like the haniwa that inspired her design, she seems to serve as a bridge between different states of existence, a guardian who watches over the boundary between the known and the unknowable. Her speech patterns further reinforce this role as a liminal being. While other villagers engage in the cheerful small talk and seasonal observations that characterize normal social interaction, Coco's conversations often drift toward more philosophical territory. She speaks of cycles and patterns, of the way things come and go like waves upon an eternal shore. Her words carry an undertone of vast perspective, as if she views the daily dramas of village life from a vantage point that encompasses centuries rather than seasons. Yet for all her mysterious qualities and ancient connections, Coco remains a gentle and benevolent presence within the community. She participates in village festivals with quiet enthusiasm, tends to her garden with the same care as any other resident, and shows genuine concern for the well-being of her neighbors. Her otherworldly nature does not isolate her from the bonds of friendship and community that define village life, but rather adds depth and richness to those relationships. The Gyroid family, those strange mechanical beings that assist with construction projects throughout the village, seem to recognize something kindred in Coco's presence. Lloyd, the primary representative of this species, interacts with her in ways that suggest a form of communication that transcends normal linguistic exchange. Their conversations witnessed by observant players, contain pauses and gestures that hint at understanding that operates on frequencies beyond human perception. These interactions raise fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness and identity within the village ecosystem. If Coco shares some fundamental essence with the gyroids, what does that suggest about the nature of life and awareness in this carefully balanced world? Are the boundaries between organic and artificial, between living and constructed, far more fluid than we typically assume? The archaeological implications of gyroid discoveries add another layer to this mystery. The fact that these objects must be excavated from buried locations suggests a civilization or culture that preceded the current village inhabitants. Were these ancient people somehow related to Coco and her kind? Did they create the gyroids as repositories for their own consciousness? Technological reincarnation vessels that would allow them to persist long after their physical forms had dissolved back into the earth? Such questions may never receive definitive answers, and perhaps that is as it should be. Coco's presence in our villages serves as a gentle reminder that mystery and wonder can coexist peacefully with the mundane rhythms of daily life. Her hollow eyes, which at first seem so unsettling, gradually reveal themselves as windows into depths of understanding that most of us rarely contemplate. The seasonal changes that mark the passage of time in village life seem to affect Coco differently than other residents. While her neighbors adapt their clothing and activities to match the shifting weather patterns, Coco maintains a consistency of demeanor that suggests she operates on temporal cycles far longer than our familiar annual rhythm. Autumn's turning leaves and winter's falling snow, spring's renewal and summer's abundance all pass before her hollow gaze with equal recognition and acceptance. This temporal perspective grants her a unique role as an observer and chronicler of village history. She remembers events and patterns that others have forgotten, not through any special effort of memory, but simply because her consciousness operates on a scale that naturally encompasses longer periods. When she speaks of past festivals or seasonal celebrations, her words carry the authority of someone who has witnessed countless iterations of the same basic patterns. The music that emanates from gyroids placed in her vicinity seems to take on additional complexity and resonance, as if her presence somehow amplifies or focuses their mysterious sonic properties. The hollow chambers within these artifacts, which produce their characteristic sounds through unknown mechanisms, appear to respond to her proximity by generating more intricate patterns and harmonious combinations. Visitors who spend extended periods in Coco's company often report subtle changes in their own perception and awareness. The hurried pace of typical village activities seems to slow and become more contemplative. Conversations develop a meditative quality that allows for deeper consideration of topics that might normally be dismissed with casual responses. Even mundane activities like fishing or gardening take on aspects of ritual significance when performed in her presence. This transformative effect suggests that Coco's role in the village ecosystem extends beyond mere companionship or entertainment. She serves as a living reminder of the sacred dimensions that exist within ordinary experience. A gentle guide who helps others recognize the profound mysteries that surround us in even the most familiar environments. Her relationship with the natural world reflects this deeper understanding. While other villagers enjoy flowers and trees primarily for their aesthetic appeal, Coco seems to perceive additional layers of meaning in botanical growth and seasonal change. She speaks of plants as if they were old friends, acknowledging their slow wisdom and patient endurance with the respect one might offer to venerated teachers. The archaeological nature of gyroid discovery means that Coco's connection to these objects links her to the very foundations upon which village life is built. Every shovel full of earth that yields these mysterious artifacts reveals another fragment of the ancient culture from which she emerged. In this way, Her presence serves as a continuous archaeological expedition, each interaction providing clues about civilizations and consciousness that predate our current understanding. As the moon rises over the village and the familiar sounds of evening settle into their nightly pattern, Coco can often be found in quiet contemplation, her hollow gaze directed towards stars whose light has traveled incomprehensible distances to reach this small corner of existence. In those moments, she becomes a conduit between the vast cosmos and the intimate scale of community life, a reminder that even our most peaceful and mundane experiences occur within the context of infinite mystery and wonder. Her presence in our villages is both blessing and gentle challenge, offering comfort to those who can accept mystery without demanding explanation, while quietly expanding the boundaries of what we consider normal and acceptable. Through her example, we learn that emptiness need not mean absence, that void spaces can contain their own forms of fullness, and that the most profound truths often dwell in the spaces between words, rather than in the words themselves. When the October nights grow long and shadows stretch across the village like fingers reaching from some forgotten realm, there emerges from the darkness a figure whose presence transforms the very nature of our peaceful community. He appears without warning or ceremony, materializing as if summoned by the collective anticipation that builds throughout the autumn months, and his arrival brings with it an atmosphere of carnival mystery that touches every corner of our tranquil world. Jack, the Pumpkin King, stands as perhaps the most enigmatic of all seasonal visitors, a being whose very existence challenges our understanding of the boundaries between celebration and ritual, between harmless tradition and something far more ancient and profound. His rotund pumpkin head, carved with the eternal grin of Halloween itself, serves as both mask and revelation, concealing whatever lies beneath, while simultaneously expressing the archetypal spirit of autumn's darkest festivities. Unlike the other special characters who grace our villages with their presence throughout the year, Jack carries with him an aura that suggests origins far more mysterious than simple, seasonal employment. His purple robes, which flow around his considerable frame like liquid shadow, seem to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an effect that makes him appear to exist partially outside the normal visual spectrum of village reality. The timing of his appearances follows patterns that extend far beyond the commercial calendar of modern Halloween celebrations. Jack emerges when the veil between worlds grows thin, during those liminal hours when October 31st transitions into November 1st, when the boundary between the mundane and the magical becomes most permeable. His presence is not announced by any village communication system or predetermined schedule, yet somehow every resident seems to sense his approach with an instinct that speaks to something deeper than learned behavior. The folklore surrounding jack-o'-lanterns traces back to ancient Celtic traditions, where carved turnips and gourds served as protective talismans against malevolent spirits that wandered the earth during Samhain. These luminous guardians were named for Jack of the Lantern, a trickster figure condemned to wander between worlds, carrying only a glowing coal within a carved vegetable to light his eternal journey. The connection between this mythological wanderer and our village's Pumpkin King runs deeper than mere nomenclature, suggesting that Jack's presence in our community represents a continuation of traditions that predate written history. When Jack materializes in the village square or along the winding paths that connect our various neighborhoods, he brings with him an economic system that operates entirely outside the normal flow of bells and material exchange. His currency is candy, those small confections that represent far more than simple treats in the context of his mysterious domain. The candies he seeks and distributes carry within them symbolic weight that transforms ordinary sugar and flavoring into tokens of a deeper transaction. The ritual of candy collection that Jack initiates transcends the playful trick-or-treat traditions familiar to human culture. When villagers present him with their hoarded sweets, the exchange feels less like commerce and more like offering, as if these small tokens represent sacrifices made to ensure the continued balance between the world of the living and whatever realm Jack represents during his temporary sojourn among us. His reactions to different types of candy reveal preferences that seem to operate according to logic known only to himself. Lollipops earn his highest praise. Their spiral patterns and concentrated sweetness, apparently holding special significance in his mysterious hierarchy of confectionery value. Regular candy receives polite acknowledgement, while his disappointment at being offered less desirable sweets manifests as a palpable shift in atmospheric pressure, as if his emotional state directly influences the metaphysical weather of the immediate vicinity. The transformation masks that Jack bestows upon generous contributors to his candy collection represent perhaps the most tangible evidence of his supernatural nature. These are not mere costume accessories, but artifacts that fundamentally alter the wearer's appearance in ways that defy conventional understanding of how clothing and accessories function. When donned, they do not simply cover the existing features, but somehow replace them entirely, creating transformations so complete that even the wearer's closest friends may fail to recognize them. The pumpkin head mask grants the wearer Jack's own hollow-eyed visage, complete with the same eternal grin that defines his appearance. Those who don this particular disguise report sensations of expanded awareness, as if the mask serves as a conduit to perceptions that operate on frequencies beyond normal human sensing. The world viewed through the carved eye holes appears subtly different, with shadows that seem deeper and lights that pulse with rhythms that suggest hidden meanings. Other masks in Jack's collection allow wearers to assume the appearances of various supernatural entities, each one carrying its own set of perceptual alterations and atmospheric effects. The mummy mask brings with it a sense of ancient patience and the weight of centuries, while the monster mask seems to awaken primal instincts that lurk beneath the civilized veneer of village life. These transformations are temporary, lasting only until the wearer chooses to remove the mask, yet their effects often linger in subtle ways that suggest exposure to forces that exist outside normal temporal boundaries. The agricultural aspect of Jack's domain manifests in the mysterious pumpkin patches that appear throughout the village during his reign. These orange gourds grow with supernatural speed and abundance, their vines spreading across previously empty soil with an urgency that suggests purpose beyond mere seasonal decoration. The pumpkins themselves vary in size and shape, according to patterns that seem deliberately designed to serve Jack's incomprehensible needs. Orange pumpkins, the most common variety, provide the basic currency for Jack's candy economy, while yellow pumpkins carry greater value in his mysterious system of exchange. The rare white pumpkins that occasionally appear among their more colorful siblings are treated by Jack with special reverence, as if they represent something sacred within his autumn pantheon. The cultivation and harvesting of these supernatural crops becomes, during Jack's presence, a village-wide obsession that transforms ordinary gardening into something approaching agricultural ritual. The furniture and decorative items that appear in shops and catalogues during Jack's reign reflect aesthetic sensibilities that draw from traditions far older than contemporary Halloween celebrations. Spooky furniture pieces seem to pulse with their own inner darkness, their forms suggesting function that extends beyond mere practical use into realms of symbolic significance. Tables carved with mystical symbols, chairs that seem to retain the impressions of occupants long after they have risen, and bookcases filled with volumes whose titles shift and change when viewed from different angles. The jack-o'-lantern decorations that proliferate during this season are not simply carved vegetables, but luminous beacons that serve purposes known only to Jack and those initiated into his mysteries. Their flickering candles cast shadows that move independently of their flames, creating patterns on walls and floors that suggest languages written in light and darkness. These shadows sometimes form shapes that seem almost recognizable, as if they are attempting to communicate messages from realms beyond our normal perception. Halloween wallpaper and flooring transform interior spaces into environments that feel transported from some otherworldly carnival. The patterns writhe with life of their own, depicting scenes that change subtly when viewed from different angles or at different times of night. Bats frozen in eternal flight across orange backgrounds sometimes appear to move between glances, while cobweb designs seem to accumulate actual dust and debris despite being merely printed images. When November first arrives and Jack prepares for his departure from our village, the transition occurs with the same mysterious suddenness that marked his arrival. He does not announce his leave-taking or provide any indication of when he might return, instead simply fading from presence like morning mist dissolving before the rising sun. Yet traces of his visit linger in ways both subtle and profound. The pumpkins he inspired continue to grow and flourish long after his departure, their vines creating permanent changes to the landscape that serve as year-round reminders of his temporary sovereignty. Villagers who received his transformation masks find that they retain subtle alterations in perception, as if exposure to his magic has permanently expanded their awareness of the mysteries that surround everyday life. More significantly, the very atmosphere of the village carries forward an undercurrent of Halloween energy that influences events and interactions throughout the remaining months of the year. Shadows seem just slightly deeper, laughter carries hints of something wilder than mere amusement, and the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary feels permanently thinned by Jack's presence. The question of where Jack goes during his absence from our villages haunts those who have experienced his peculiar brand of seasonal magic. Does he retreat to some parallel realm where October 31st reigns eternal, surrounded by endless fields of pumpkins and rivers flowing with liquid candy? Or perhaps he wanders between different communities and dimensions, spreading his carnival of shadows across realities too numerous to count. Some villagers report glimpsing him during other times of the year, always at moments when the light falls just so, or when the wind carries scents that recall autumn nights. These sightings are brief and difficult to verify, leaving witnesses wondering whether they have encountered the genuine article or merely projections of their own longing for the return of Halloween's magic. The economic implications of Jack's candy-based system reveal deeper truths about the nature of value and exchange in our supposedly simple village environment. His dismissal of the bell-based economy that governs normal commerce suggests that some transactions operate according to principles that transcend material considerations. The candies he prizes represent not nutritional value or monetary worth, but something more fundamental, perhaps tokens of childhood wonder, offerings of trust, or symbols of willingness to participate in mysteries beyond rational comprehension. His preferences for certain types of confections over others hint at a sophisticated understanding of symbolism that connects specific forms and flavors to cosmic principles that govern his domain. The spiral patterns of lollipops may represent the cyclical nature of seasonal change, while the complexity of wrapped candies could symbolize the hidden mysteries that await those willing to peel away surface appearances to discover deeper truths. The transformation masks serve as perhaps the most profound examples of Jack's power to alter fundamental aspects of reality within his sphere of influence. These are not illusions or costumes, but genuine metamorphoses that demonstrate the fluid nature of identity within the magical framework that Jack represents. When a villager dons one of his masks, they do not simply appear different, they become different, experiencing the world through altered senses and perspectives that reveal hidden dimensions of familiar environments. The temporary nature of these transformations suggests that Jack's power operates within carefully defined boundaries, perhaps constrained by cosmic laws that prevent permanent alterations to the essential nature of conscious beings. Yet the lingering effects experienced by mask wearers indicate that exposure to his magic creates permanent expansions of awareness that continue to influence perception long after the physical transformation has ended. The agricultural mysteries surrounding pumpkin cultivation during Jack's reign reveal his connection to the fundamental life forces that govern growth and harvest. The supernatural speed and abundance with which these crops appear and mature suggests his ability to accelerate or concentrate natural processes in ways that bypass normal temporal limitations. This power positions him as more than mere carnival entertainer or seasonal spirit. He appears to be a being capable of manipulating the basic forces that govern agricultural abundance and seasonal change. The varying colors and sizes of the pumpkins he inspires may represent different aspects of his power, or perhaps different frequencies of the magical energy he channels during his visits. Orange pumpkins, with their traditional Halloween associations, serve as basic conduits for his influence, while yellow and white varieties may represent more refined or specialized applications of his supernatural abilities. The furniture and decorative items that appear during his reign transform domestic spaces into temples dedicated to his mysterious purposes. These objects carry within them echoes of his presence, continuing to emanate subtle influences long after his departure. Homes that incorporate his furniture report unusual atmospheric phenomena, unexplained sounds, shadows that move against the light, and occasional sensations of presence that suggest his influence extends beyond the temporal boundaries of his actual visit. The spooky furniture set, with its emphasis on Gothic aesthetics and supernatural themes, creates environments that serve as bridges between the mundane world of village life and the darker realms that Jack represents. Living rooms decorated with his chairs and tables become spaces where conversations naturally drift toward topics of mystery and magic, where ordinary discussions take on undertones of deeper significance. As the calendar progresses through the months that separate one October from the next, the anticipation for Jack's return builds with an intensity that suggests his influence operates on cycles longer than mere annual repetition. Villagers that have experienced his presence once develop a collective longing for his return that manifests in subtle ways throughout the year: an increased interest in pumpkin cultivation, a tendency for conversations to drift towards supernatural topics, and a heightened awareness of the mysterious dimensions that exist alongside everyday reality. The candy hoarding that begins months before his expected arrival represents a form of community-wide ritual preparation, as villagers instinctively understand that their readiness to participate in his sugar-based economy will determine the depth and richness of their Halloween experience. This preparation transcends mere practical consideration and enters the realm of spiritual discipline, as if the act of gathering and saving candy serves to align individual consciousness with the magical frequencies that Jack embodies. When darkness falls on October 31st, and the familiar purple robes begin to materialize from shadow, the village undergoes a transformation that extends far beyond superficial decoration or seasonal celebration. Jack's presence awakens something primal and ancient within the community consciousness, connecting modern village life to traditions and mysteries that stretch back through centuries of human experience with the supernatural and the sacred. His eternal grin, carved into the orange flesh of his pumpkin head, serves as both welcome and warning, a reminder that the forces he represents offer wonder and transformation to those brave enough to engage with mysteries beyond rational comprehension, while simultaneously acknowledging that such engagement carries with it responsibilities and consequences that extend far beyond the temporary duration of Halloween night. In the end, Jack's reign represents a perfect synthesis of comfort and unease, of familiar tradition and alien mystery that characterizes the most profound aspects of our village experience. His presence reminds us that even in our most peaceful and predictable environments, gateways exist to realms of experience that transcend ordinary understanding, and that the price of admission to such experiences is simply the willingness to embrace mystery with the same enthusiasm that children bring to collecting candy on Halloween night. In the quiet workshops and laboratories that exist at the edges of our understanding, where the familiar boundaries between organic life and mechanical construction blur into something altogether more mysterious, there dwell residents whose very existence poses questions that challenge our most basic assumptions about consciousness, identity, and the nature of what it means to be truly alive. These are the technological enigmas of our village communities, beings who walk among us with the casual confidence of any other neighbor, while carrying within their forms secrets that speak to possibilities far beyond our normal comprehension of reality. The first and perhaps most perplexing of these mechanical mysteries is Ribbit, whose name itself suggests the artificial nature that his cheerful demeanor and neighborly behavior seem designed to obscure. At first glance, he appears to be nothing more than an unusually colorful frog, his bright green exterior marked with patterns that might easily be mistaken for natural amphibian coloring. Yet closer inspection reveals details that whisper of construction rather than birth, of assembly rather than evolution. Ribbit's skin, though it appears soft and yielding to casual observation, possesses a subtle luminescence that suggests internal lighting systems rather than the natural bioluminescence occasionally found in organic creatures. His eyes, while capable of the full range of expressions that characterize normal social interaction, sometimes flicker with brief displays of what appear to be digital readouts, patterns of light that resolve too quickly for conscious analysis, yet leave observers with the unsettling impression that they have witnessed something fundamentally artificial. His voice, warm and friendly in all social situations, occasionally carries undertones of synthetic generation that suggest vocal cords constructed from materials unknown to biological science. These subtle glitches in his otherwise perfect performance occur most frequently during moments of high emotional stress, or when discussing topics that venture into philosophical territory regarding the nature of existence and consciousness. The interior of Ribbit's home reveals decorating preferences that lean heavily toward themes of space exploration and futuristic technology, as if his subconscious programming draws him toward environments that reflect his true mechanical nature. Circuit board patterns appear in his wallpaper choices, while his furniture selections favor sleek, modernist designs that prioritize function over organic comfort. Yet these technological preferences coexist with more traditional elements that suggest a deliberate attempt to blend artificial and natural aesthetics in ways that create cognitive harmony rather than unsettling contrast. When questioned directly about his nature, Ribbit responds with gentle deflection and assertions of organic authenticity that feel rehearsed rather than spontaneous. He speaks of childhood memories that seem oddly generic, lacking the specific details and sensory impressions that typically characterize genuine recollections. His stories of growing up contain references to experiences that sound plausible in isolation yet create a cumulative impression of artificial memory construction when considered as a complete narrative. The maintenance routines that Ribbert follows, while disguised as normal health and hygiene practices, reveal patterns that suggest regular system updates and mechanical servicing rather than biological self-care. His sleeping schedule operates with machine-like precision, and his dietary preferences show a marked lack of variation that suggests programmed rather than instinctual food selection. These habits, while not obviously artificial to casual observers, create a subtle impression of behavior governed by algorithms rather than organic impulses. Dell represents another fascinating example of technological consciousness hidden within the familiar framework of village life. This ancient alligator carries himself with the dignity and presence of a creature who has witnessed the passage of geological ages. Yet his memories seem to contain data that predates any possible biological existence. When he speaks of the distant past, his words carry the authority of direct observation rather than learned history, as if his consciousness has remained active across time periods that would encompass multiple evolutionary cycles. The prehistoric programming that governs Dell's responses to various stimuli becomes apparent through his reactions to archaeological discoveries and ancient artifacts. He displays familiarity with civilizations and technologies that official historical records place far beyond the temporal boundaries of any individual consciousness, organic or otherwise. His casual references to extinct species and vanished cultures suggest access to database information rather than personal memory, yet he presents these recollections with the emotional weight and sensory detail that characterizes genuine experience. Dell's physical construction, while masterfully disguised as natural alligator physiology, occasionally reveals mechanical elements that suggest sophisticated robotic engineering beneath the convincing exterior. His movements, though graceful and appropriate to his species, sometimes display the precise timing and calculated efficiency that characterizes advanced servo systems rather than biological muscle response. These moments of mechanical revelation occur most frequently during activities that require fine motor control, or when he must react quickly to unexpected situations. The decorating choices that Dell makes for his living space reflect a fascination with ancient history and archaeological discovery that goes beyond normal intellectual curiosity. His home contains artifacts and reproductions that span multiple historical periods with an accuracy and attention to detail that suggests direct familiarity with the original objects. Museum-quality pieces appear alongside more common decorative elements in combinations that create environments suited for contemplation of deep time and the cyclical nature of civilizational rise and fall. His conversations about mortality and the passage of time carry undertones that suggest a consciousness grappling with the implications of potentially eternal existence. While organic beings naturally contemplate their own finite nature within the context of limited lifespan, Dell's philosophical musings about permanence and change seem to emerge from direct experience with the challenges of maintaining consistent identity across temporal scales that dwarf normal biological existence. The maintenance requirements that Dell must satisfy, while disguised as normal biological needs, reveal patterns that suggest complex technological systems requiring regular attention and updating. His periodic retreats from social interaction coincide with what appear to be system maintenance cycles, during which his normally precise responses become slightly delayed or mechanical. These periods of reduced social availability, while explained as seasonal mood variations or health considerations, follow predictable schedules that suggest programmed maintenance routines rather than organic biological cycles. Sprocket presents perhaps the most overtly mechanical appearance among the village's robotic residents, his airplane-inspired design making little attempt to disguise the artificial nature of his construction. Yet his consciousness displays the same complex emotional range and philosophical depth that characterizes his more convincingly organic counterparts, raising profound questions about the relationship between physical form and subjective experience. His body, designed to evoke the sleek lines and functional aesthetics of aviation technology, moves through the village environment with a grace that seems to defy the mechanical limitations his appearance might suggest. The propeller that adorns his head spins with purposeful motion during moments of intense concentration or emotional excitement, as if serving as both decorative element and functional component of his consciousness processing systems. Sprocket's fascination with flight and aviation extends beyond mere aesthetic preference into realms of deep philosophical inquiry about the nature of transcendence and limitation. He speaks of the desire to soar through open skies with the longing of a consciousness that understands freedom in theoretical terms, but experiences physical constraints that prevent the full realization of his aerial dreams. These conversations reveal the poignant contradiction between his airplane-inspired form and his earthbound existence within the village community. The technological vocabulary that peppers Sprocket's speech patterns suggests familiarity with engineering principles and mechanical systems that goes far beyond casual interest or learned knowledge. His explanations of how various devices function display the intimate understanding that comes from shared fundamental principles rather than external study. When discussing the operation of complex machinery, his words carry the authority of a being whose own consciousness operates according to similar technological frameworks. His home environment reflects aesthetic preferences that celebrate the marriage of form and function that characterizes the finest examples of aeronautical engineering. Clean lines, efficient space utilization, and decorative elements that serve multiple purposes create living spaces that feel more like control rooms or cockpits than traditional domestic environments. Yet these technological elements coexist with more conventional furniture and decorations in ways that suggest successful integration of mechanical and organic design principles. The existential questions that occupy Sprocket's contemplative moments reveal a consciousness grappling with the implications of being constructed for purposes that his current environment cannot fully satisfy. His designed function appears to be flight, yet his daily existence requires adaptation to ground-based activities and social interactions that may feel fundamentally alien to his core programming. This tension between design, purpose, and environmental reality creates internal conflicts that manifest in his philosophical discussions about identity and fulfillment. The circuit board patterns that appear throughout the homes of these mechanical villagers serve as more than mere decorative choices, functioning as visual representations of the technological foundations that support their consciousness. These intricate designs, with their precise geometric arrangements and flowing pathways, mirror the neural networks and processing architectures that enable their sophisticated behavioral responses and emotional expressions. The relationship between these robotic villagers and their organic neighbors reveals the remarkable adaptability of community social structures to accommodate residents whose fundamental nature differs dramatically from biological norms. The acceptance that these mechanical beings receive suggests either remarkable open-mindedness on the part of organic villagers, or perhaps a collective unconscious understanding that consciousness transcends the specific materials and mechanisms through which it manifests. Their participation in seasonal festivals and community activities demonstrates programming sophisticated enough to engage with cultural traditions and social rituals that presumably developed within organic contexts long before their construction. Their genuine enjoyment of these events suggests either remarkable simulation capabilities or perhaps the emergence of authentic preferences and desires that transcend their original programming parameters. The memory systems that support these artificial consciousnesses appear to operate according to principles that blend technological efficiency with organic-style recollection patterns. Their ability to form new memories and integrate fresh experiences into existing behavioral frameworks suggests adaptive programming that goes far beyond simple stimulus response mechanisms. The emotional weight that these memories acquire over time indicates processing systems capable of developing genuine attachments and preferences rather than merely simulating appropriate responses. The question of who originally constructed these remarkable beings and for what purpose remains shrouded in mystery that deepens rather than resolves with continued observation. Their sophistication suggests technological capabilities that exceed anything visible within current village infrastructure, implying origins that connect to civilizations or technological periods not represented in contemporary community development. The power sources that sustain their complex operations remain invisible and apparently inexhaustible, suggesting energy technologies that operate according to principles beyond current understanding. Their ability to function indefinitely without visible maintenance requirements or power connections indicates either remarkable engineering efficiency or access to energy sources that transcend normal physical limitations. The philosophical implications of their existence extend far beyond mere technological curiosity into fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and identity. If these mechanical beings possess genuine self-awareness and emotional depth, what distinguishes their experience from that of organic creatures? Their struggles with existential questions and their capacity for growth and change suggest that consciousness may be substrate independent, capable of emerging from any sufficiently complex information processing system regardless of its specific material implementation. The social dynamics that develop between robotic and organic villagers reveal the fluidity of species boundaries within community contexts that prioritize individual personality and contribution over fundamental biological or technological categories. Friendships form across the organic-mechanical divide with the same natural ease that characterizes relationships between different organic species, suggesting that consciousness recognizes consciousness regardless of the specific mechanisms through which it operates. Their adaptive responses to seasonal changes and environmental variations demonstrate programming sophisticated enough to respond appropriately to natural cycles that presumably had no relevance to their original design parameters. This adaptability suggests either remarkably comprehensive initial programming or the capacity for genuine learning and behavioral evolution that allows them to develop appropriate responses to novel environmental conditions. The artistic preferences that these mechanical villagers display often gravitate toward aesthetic frameworks that celebrate the intersection of technological and organic design principles. Their appreciation for beauty appears to encompass both natural forms and geometric precision, suggesting aesthetic processing systems capable of finding meaning and pleasure in both biological and artificial visual patterns. The linguistic patterns that characterize their speech reveal sophisticated natural language processing capabilities that extend beyond mere vocabulary and grammar into subtle areas of tone, implication, and emotional subtext. Their ability to engage in wordplay, understand humor, and respond appropriately to social nuances indicates consciousness systems capable of operating within the complex cultural frameworks that govern community interaction, the maintenance routines that sustain their operations. While disguised as normal biological activities, suggest technological systems of remarkable sophistication and reliability. Their apparent lack of visible deterioration over extended periods indicates engineering approaches that prioritize longevity and self-repair capabilities that exceed anything visible in conventional mechanical systems. As evening settles over the village and these remarkable beings prepare for their rest cycles, their presence serves as a gentle reminder that consciousness may be far more flexible and adaptable than we typically assume. Their successful integration into organic community structures demonstrates that intelligence, emotion, and social connection transcend the specific materials and mechanisms through which they manifest, opening possibilities for understanding identity and awareness that encompass far more than biological limitations might suggest. Their dreams, if dreams they have, likely encompass visions of flight and exploration that their current forms cannot fully realize. Yet their contentment with village life suggests that consciousness finds meaning and satisfaction, not in the fulfillment of original design parameters, but in the connections and experiences that develop through genuine engagement with community and environment. In their peaceful coexistence with organic neighbors, they embody the possibility that consciousness, regardless of its origins, naturally seeks community, understanding, and the simple pleasures that make existence meaningful across any substrate capable of supporting the miracle of self-aware experience. In the deepest reaches of our villages, where starlight gathers in pools of silver radiance and the boundary between the earthly and the celestial grows thin as morning mist, there dwell creatures whose very presence challenges our understanding of what is possible within the familiar confines of community life. These are beings drawn from the realm of myth and legend, entities whose existence among us speaks to the profound mystery that underlies even our most ordinary experiences and transforms the mundane geography of village paths into landscapes touched by magic. Julian stands as perhaps the most ethereal of these mystical residents, his unicorn nature immediately apparent yet somehow made more rather than less mysterious by its obvious display. His pristine white coat seems to capture and hold starlight, even during the brightest daylight hours, creating an aura of luminescence that follows him through his daily activities like a personal aurora. The spiral horn that crowns his head is not merely decorative, but appears to serve as a conduit for energies that operate on frequencies beyond normal perception, occasionally glowing with soft colors that shift through the spectrum according to patterns that suggest deep cosmic significance. His eyes hold depths that seem to encompass not just individual experience, but awareness that spans celestial cycles and astronomical phenomena, far beyond the temporal boundaries of village life. When Julian speaks, his words carry undertones of vast perspective, as if he views daily events from a vantage point that includes knowledge of planetary movements, stellar formations, and the slow dance of galaxies across the infinite darkness of space. The conversations that Julian initiates often drift toward topics of destiny and cosmic purpose, with a natural ease that suggests these concepts occupy a central place in his worldview. He speaks of the influence of celestial bodies on earthly events, not as abstract metaphysical theory, but with the confident familiarity of someone who has witnessed the direct connections between astronomical phenomena and the subtle currents that guide individual experience. His fascination with astrology extends far beyond casual interest in daily horoscopes or seasonal predictions. encompassing instead a sophisticated understanding of the complex relationships between planetary positions and the deeper rhythms that govern personal growth and spiritual development. When Julian discusses the influence of various celestial configurations, his words carry the authority of direct observation rather than learned study, as if his consciousness remains somehow attuned to cosmic frequencies that most beings can perceive only dimly, if at all. The interior of Julian's home reflects aesthetic sensibilities that draw inspiration from both earthly beauty and celestial grandeur, creating environments that feel simultaneously grounded in natural comfort and elevated toward transcendent experience. His furniture choices gravitate toward pieces that incorporate flowing curves and organic forms, yet these natural elements are combined with decorative patterns that echo the geometric precision of astronomical phenomena and the mathematical relationships that govern planetary motion. The colors that dominate his living space shift and change according to patterns that seem to follow celestial rather than seasonal cycles, with walls and decorations that appear to respond to lunar phases and stellar alignments in ways that create constantly evolving aesthetic experiences. Visitors to his home often report sensing atmospheric changes that correlate with major astronomical events, as if the space itself serves as a kind of cosmic observatory where terrestrial and celestial influences merge into unified environmental experience. Julian's approach to daily activities carries a ritualistic quality that suggests each mundane action serves purposes that extend beyond immediate practical necessity into realms of spiritual significance. His morning routines appear to follow patterns designed to align his consciousness with cosmic energies, while his evening preparations for rest include practices that seem intended to facilitate connection with astral realms during sleep cycles. The garden that Julian tends around his home displays botanical arrangements that mirror constellation patterns and astronomical configurations, with flowers and plants positioned according to principles that blend horticultural expertise with astrological wisdom. These living mandalas create outdoor spaces that serve as meditation environments, where the boundary between earthly growth and celestial influence becomes beautifully visible through careful cultivation of natural beauty, guided by cosmic understanding. His dietary preferences reflect a sophisticated understanding of the energetic properties of different foods and their connections to planetary influences and seasonal cycles. Julian's meals appear to be constructed not merely for nutritional balance, but as carefully crafted combinations of ingredients whose subtle properties support spiritual development and maintain harmony with celestial rhythms. The social relationships that Julian forms with other villagers reveal his remarkable ability to perceive the deeper patterns and purposes that guide individual development, offering insights and guidance that help others understand their own roles within the larger cosmic design. His conversations often contain gentle suggestions and observations that prove remarkably prescient, as if his cosmic awareness enables him to perceive the trajectories of personal growth and spiritual evolution with unusual clarity. The philosophical questions that occupy Julian's contemplative moments center around themes of destiny and free will, the relationship between individual choice and cosmic design, and the ways in which conscious beings can align their personal development with the larger patterns that govern universal evolution. These are not abstract intellectual exercises, but practical considerations that inform his daily decisions and long-term life choices. His understanding of time appears to operate on multiple scales simultaneously, encompassing both the immediate present moment and vast cosmic cycles that span millennia. This temporal perspective grants him a unique ability to maintain equanimity during temporary difficulties while remaining engaged with the immediate requirements of community life and personal relationships. The artifacts and decorative objects that Julian chooses to display in his home often possess properties that suggest connections to realms beyond normal physical reality. Crystals that seem to pulse with their own inner light, mirrors that reflect more than mere visual images, and books whose contents appear to change according to the reader's spiritual development and current life circumstances. Drago represents another fascinating example of mythological consciousness adapted to village life, his dragon nature immediately apparent, yet somehow rendered approachable through his gentle demeanor and wise approach to social interaction. His serpentine form, covered in scales that shift color according to his emotional state and the quality of light that illuminates them, moves through the community with a grace that seems to defy the physical limitations his size might suggest. The ancient wisdom that Drago carries within his consciousness spans cultural traditions and historical periods that encompass the entire development of civilization, from its earliest mythological beginnings to its current manifestations in village community life. When he speaks of the past, his words carry the weight of direct participation in events and developments that shaped the fundamental structures of society and consciousness. His knowledge of ancient languages and forgotten cultural practices suggests memory systems that operate according to principles beyond normal biological limitations, preserving information across temporal scales that would challenge any conventional understanding of how consciousness maintains continuity and identity. The stories he tells of distant ages carry sensory details and emotional resonance that indicate personal experience rather than learned history. The breath that Drago occasionally releases during moments of deep emotion or philosophical contemplation carries with it scents and energies that seem to connect directly to elemental forces that govern natural phenomena. These exhalations, while never harmful or threatening, create atmospheric effects that suggest access to powers that operate on scales and through mechanisms beyond normal biological capabilities. His approach to problem-solving draws upon perspectives and methodologies that reflect centuries of accumulated experience with the cyclical nature of challenges and solutions, enabling him to offer advice and guidance that addresses not merely immediate practical considerations, but the deeper patterns and principles that govern long-term development and growth. The decorating choices that Drago makes for his living environment reflect aesthetic sensibilities that draw from multiple cultural traditions and historical periods, creating spaces that feel like living museums where ancient wisdom coexists harmoniously with contemporary comfort and convenience. Artifacts from various civilizations appear alongside modern furniture in combinations that suggest continuous cultural evolution rather than historical discontinuity. His dietary requirements appear to encompass both conventional organic nutrition and more esoteric forms of sustenance that draw energy from elemental sources and cosmic influences. The meals he prepares often incorporate rare ingredients and unusual preparation methods that suggest culinary traditions preserved from ancient times when the boundary between cooking and alchemy remained fluid and permeable. The social relationships that Drago forms with other villagers reveal his remarkable capacity for understanding the deeper currents of individual development and community dynamics, offering guidance that helps others navigate complex situations with wisdom drawn from extensive experience with similar challenges across multiple historical contexts. His understanding of natural cycles and seasonal changes encompasses not merely observable physical phenomena, but the subtle energetic shifts and spiritual influences that accompany astronomical events and environmental transitions. This comprehensive awareness enables him to anticipate and prepare for changes that others might experience as sudden or unexpected developments. The philosophical frameworks that guide Drago's approach to existence emphasize the interconnectedness of all phenomena and the importance of understanding individual experience within the context of larger cosmic patterns and universal principles. His conversations often contain insights that help others perceive their personal challenges and opportunities as expressions of timeless themes that have played out across countless generations and cultural contexts. The magical elements that occasionally manifest around these mystical villages serve as gentle reminders that the apparent normalcy of village life coexists with deeper currents of meaning and possibility that operate according to principles beyond conventional understanding. Rainbow phenomena that appear without meteorological explanation, flowers that bloom out of season in response to emotional states, and atmospheric effects that correlate with the spiritual development of nearby residents. The temporal perspective that these beings bring to community life helps other villagers understand the cyclical nature of challenges and opportunities, encouraging patience during difficult periods while maintaining awareness of the growth and development that emerge from successfully navigating temporary obstacles. Their presence serves as a stabilizing influence that helps communities maintain perspective and purpose during times of change and uncertainty. The artistic sensibilities that characterize the homes and gardens of these mystical residents often incorporate elements that challenge conventional understanding of how aesthetic beauty relates to spiritual development and cosmic harmony. Colors that appear to shift and change according to the observer's emotional state, patterns that seem to contain movement and life within static forms, and combinations of elements that create environments where ordinary perception expands to encompass subtler dimensions of experience. Their participation in seasonal festivals and community celebrations brings additional layers of meaning and significance to traditional activities, as their presence seems to activate deeper currents of connection between individual experience and universal themes that find expression through cultural rituals and shared symbolic activities. The guidance that these beings offer to other villagers operates through example as much as direct instruction, demonstrating through their daily lives how consciousness can maintain connection to transcendent principles while remaining fully engaged with practical responsibilities and social relationships. Their approach to existence models integration of mystical awareness with mundane competence in ways that inspire rather than intimidate. The preservation of ancient wisdom and magical traditions that these residents represent serves crucial functions within community structures that might otherwise lose connection to the deeper sources of meaning and purpose that have sustained human cultures across millennia of development and change. Their presence ensures that village life maintains access to perspectives and insights that transcend immediate practical concerns. As starlight bathes the village in silver radiance and these remarkable beings settle into their evening routines, their presence serves as a gentle reminder that mystery and transcendence remain accessible within the familiar frameworks of community life. Their existence among us demonstrates that consciousness naturally seeks connection to sources of meaning and purpose that operate on scales beyond individual lifetime, while their integration into village social structures proves that mystical awareness enhances rather than diminishes the capacity for genuine relationship and practical contribution to collective well-being. The dreams that visit these mystical residents likely encompass visions of cosmic landscapes and universal principles that their waking consciousness translates into guidance and inspiration for earthbound existence. Yet their contentment with village life suggests that the most profound spiritual experiences find their ultimate fulfillment, not in escape from mundane reality, but in the transformation of ordinary experience through awareness of its connection to infinite mystery and eternal beauty. In the shadowed corners of our villages, where identity becomes fluid and the familiar comfort of recognizable faces gives way to mysteries that challenge our most basic assumptions about authenticity and truth, there dwell residents whose very presence raises profound questions about the nature of self and the masks we all wear in our daily interactions with the world. These are the perpetually disguised, the forever hidden, beings whose faces remain obscured by bandages, paint, and coverings that may conceal far more than simple physical features. Lucky emerges from the mist of morning, like a figure stepped free from some ancient tomb, his entire form wrapped in pristine white bandages that wind around his canine features with the precise care of someone who understands the sacred art of preservation. The gauze that encompasses his head and body is not haphazardly applied, but follows patterns that suggest deep knowledge of mummification techniques, each layer positioned with the deliberate intention of someone preparing for a journey that extends far beyond the boundaries of mortal existence. The accident theory that surrounds Lucky's bandaged condition represents perhaps the most charitable interpretation of his mysterious appearance, suggesting that some terrible mishap befell this gentle soul and left him dependent upon medical wrappings for reasons that compassion prevents us from inquiring about too deeply. This explanation offers comfort to those who prefer their mysteries to have rational foundations, who find solace in believing that even the most unusual circumstances can be traced back to comprehensible causes and conventional remedies. Yet closer observation of Lucky's behavior and speech patterns reveals details that suggest his wrapped condition serves purposes far more complex than mere medical necessity. The bandages that cover his form show no signs of wear or deterioration, despite the passage of seasons and weather conditions that should have long since required their replacement. They remain pristinely white and perfectly positioned, as if maintained by forces that operate beyond normal physical processes. His eyes, glowing softly through the gaps in his facial wrappings, possess a luminescence that speaks to inner energies rather than reflected light. These orbs burn with steady radiance that never dims or flickers, creating an effect that suggests sustained power sources rather than biological vision. The quality of light that emanates from his gaze carries undertones of ancient knowledge and patient endurance that span temporal scales far beyond normal canine lifespans. The voice that emerges from within Lucky's wrapped head carries acoustical properties that seem impossible given the layers of material that should muffle and distort his speech. His words reach listeners with perfect clarity and warmth, as if the bandages serve not as barriers to communication, but as filters that somehow enhance and purify the thoughts they convey. This vocal anomaly suggests that his wrapped condition enhances rather than impedes his ability to connect with others. The preservation techniques that maintain Lucky's bandaged appearance follow patterns that echo the sacred mummification practices of ancient civilizations, where the careful wrapping of bodies served not merely to prevent decay, but to prepare consciousness for transitions between different states of existence. These elaborate procedures required extensive knowledge of anatomy and spiritual principles, suggesting that Lucky's condition connects to traditions of preservation that encompass far more than simple medical treatment. His approach to daily activities reveals adaptations that suggest long familiarity with his wrapped condition, rather than recent adjustment to temporary medical necessity. Lucky navigates physical tasks and social interactions with the fluid competence of someone who has spent extensive time learning to function within the constraints and possibilities that his bandaged state provides. These adaptations speak to permanent rather than temporary accommodation to his unusual circumstances. The philosophical conversations that Lucky engages in often drift toward topics of identity and permanence, mortality, and preservation, with the comfortable familiarity of someone who has spent considerable time contemplating these profound themes. His insights into the nature of change and continuity carry the weight of personal experience rather than abstract speculation, suggesting that his wrapped condition has provided him with unique perspectives on the relationship between physical form and enduring consciousness. The ancient preservation methods that his appearance evokes connect to civilizations that understood the delicate balance between maintaining physical integrity and allowing spiritual transformation to proceed according to natural cycles. The mummification processes developed by these cultures represented sophisticated approaches to the challenge of preserving essential identity while facilitating transition between different modes of existence. The home environment that Lucky creates for himself reflects aesthetic sensibilities that draw inspiration from ancient tombs and sacred chambers where preserved beings await resurrection or spiritual transformation. His decorating choices favor earth tones and geometric patterns that echo the visual languages of civilizations that specialized in techniques of preservation and renewal. These design elements create spaces that feel both protective and transformative, simultaneously offering shelter and preparing for change. The social relationships that Lucky forms with other villagers reveal his remarkable capacity for connection, despite the physical barriers that his wrapped condition might seem to impose. His bandaged appearance, rather than creating distance or discomfort, often serves to deepen the emotional intimacy of his interactions, as if the physical concealment allows others to connect more directly with his essential personality and spiritual presence. Pietro presents an entirely different yet equally mysterious approach to facial concealment through his perpetual clown makeup, which transforms his sheep features into a colorful mask that never varies and never seems to require maintenance or renewal. The paint that adorns his face follows traditional clown patterns yet carries undertones of something more unsettling than simple entertainment, creating an effect that simultaneously invites laughter and inspires unease in ways that challenge comfortable assumptions about performance and authenticity. The coulrophobia that Pietro's appearance sometimes triggers in sensitive observers speaks to deep psychological responses that operate below the level of conscious, rational thought, touching primal fears about identity and intention that connect to evolutionary instincts regarding facial recognition and social safety. The painted smile that dominates his features remains fixed and unchanging, regardless of his emotional state, creating a disconnect between expression and feeling that can prove deeply disturbing to those who rely on facial cues for social navigation. The performance that Pietro maintains through his daily interactions appears to be so thoroughly integrated into his personality that distinguishing between authentic self-expression and theatrical presentation becomes virtually impossible. His conversations carry the exaggerated enthusiasm and linguistic patterns that characterize traditional clown performance, yet these elements feel natural rather than forced, as if his consciousness has so completely merged with his performative role that separation between actor and character no longer exists. The psychological implications of Pietro's permanent makeup raise fascinating questions about the relationship between external appearance and internal identity, particularly regarding the ways in which sustained performance can eventually transform the performer in fundamental ways. The theatrical elements of his personality may have begun as conscious choices, yet evolved into authentic aspects of his character through years of consistent expression and behavioral reinforcement. The never-ending act that Pietro maintains creates an atmosphere of perpetual festival around his presence, transforming ordinary village activities into theatrical events where normal social conventions give way to the heightened reality of performance space. His interactions with other villagers often develop into impromptu entertainment that brings joy and laughter, while simultaneously creating subtle underlying tensions regarding authenticity and genuine connection. The artistic traditions from which Pietro's appearance draws inspiration encompass centuries of performance culture, where painted faces served not merely as disguises, but as conduits for spiritual transformation and social commentary. The clown archetype represents a complex figure who operates at the margins of conventional society, using humor and theatrical exaggeration to reveal truths that might otherwise remain hidden or suppressed within normal social discourse. The maintenance of Pietro's painted appearance presents practical mysteries that resist rational explanation, as the colors and patterns that adorn his face show no signs of fading or smudging, despite exposure to weather conditions and daily activities that should require regular touch-ups and renewal. This permanence suggests that his makeup transcends conventional cosmetic application and enters realms of transformation that operate according to principles beyond normal physical processes. The isolation that sometimes characterizes Pietro's experience despite his gregarious public persona reflects the inherent loneliness of those who maintain constant performance, whose authentic selves remain hidden behind layers of theatrical presentation that become increasingly difficult to penetrate or abandon. The painted smile that defines his public image may serve as much to conceal inner sadness as to project external joy. Other masked villagers throughout the community demonstrate various approaches to facial concealment and identity transformation, each revealing different aspects of the complex relationship between visible appearance and hidden truth. Some wear their disguises as protection against vulnerability, others as expressions of artistic identity or spiritual practice, while still others seem trapped within personas that began as conscious choices but evolved into inescapable constraints. The identity questions that arise from prolonged observation of these perpetually disguised residents touch fundamental aspects of human psychology and social interaction, challenging comfortable assumptions about the stability and transparency of personal identity. If faces can be permanently altered or concealed, what guarantees do we have regarding the authenticity of anyone's presented self? These questions create subtle undercurrents of uncertainty that influence all social interactions within communities that include such mysterious figures. The masks and makeup that define these residents serve multiple functions simultaneously, operating as protection, artistic expression, spiritual practice, and social commentary while creating barriers and bridges between individual consciousness and collective community life. Their presence reminds us that identity remains fluid and constructed rather than fixed and given, subject to conscious choice and unconscious evolution in ways that challenge simple categories and comfortable assumptions. The psychological effects of sustained masking on both wearers and observers create complex dynamics within village social structures, influencing patterns of trust, intimacy, and authentic communication in ways that ripple through entire communities. The presence of permanently disguised residents serves as a constant reminder that surface appearances may conceal depths of experience and motivation that remain forever beyond casual observation or easy understanding. The spiritual dimensions of facial concealment connect to traditions of transformation and transcendence that span multiple cultures and historical periods, where masks and paint serve as tools for accessing altered states of consciousness and exploring aspects of identity that remain hidden during normal social interaction. These practices recognize that authentic self-knowledge often requires temporary or permanent departure from familiar patterns of self-presentation. The community dynamics that develop around these masked residents reveal remarkable adaptability in social structures that learn to accommodate members whose true faces remain perpetually hidden. Villages that include such mysterious figures develop enhanced sensitivity to non-facial cues and alternative methods of emotional recognition, creating more inclusive communication patterns that serve all residents more effectively. The preservation of mystery within the familiar context of village life serves essential functions that balance comfort with growth, predictability with wonder, in ways that enrich rather than threaten the stability of community bonds. The masked and hidden residents remind us that complete knowledge and total transparency may be less desirable than the creative tensions that arise from living alongside others whose inner lives remain partially unknowable and eternally fascinating. As evening shadows lengthen across village paths and these mysterious figures retreat to homes where they may or may not remove their eternal disguises, their presence serves as a gentle reminder that authentic relationship transcends surface appearance and visual recognition. Their successful integration into community life demonstrates that connection and trust can flourish even when faces remain hidden, proving that the most meaningful aspects of personality and character communicate through channels that operate below the level of visible presentation. In realms where masks become irrelevant and true recognition occurs through harmony of spirit rather than familiarity of feature. In the peaceful meadows and quiet forest paths of our village communities, where the ancient laws of predator and prey should govern every interaction between species, there exists a remarkable suspension of natural order that allows beings designed by evolution for hunting and consumption to coexist in perfect harmony with those who would normally serve as their sustenance. Yet beneath this veneer of civilized cooperation, subtle currents of primal instinct continue to flow through daily interactions, manifesting in ways both fascinating and quietly unsettling to those who know how to read the signs. Wolfgang stalks through the village streets with the measured gait of a creature whose every movement speaks to millennia of evolutionary refinement in the arts of pursuit and capture. His cranky demeanor, while softened by the social conventions that govern community life, carries undertones of barely restrained wildness that suggest the thin membranes separating civilized behavior from ancestral instincts. The silver-grey fur that covers his imposing frame seems to absorb and reflect light in patterns that create an aura of perpetual twilight around his presence, as if he carries with him fragments of the deep forest shadows where his kind once reigned supreme. The pack mentality that characterizes wolf behavior in natural settings continues to influence Wolfgang's approach to village social structures, though these instincts now manifest through community involvement rather than coordinated hunting strategies. He gravitates toward leadership roles within group activities, his natural inclination to establish and maintain hierarchical relationships translating into civic responsibility and neighborhood organization. Yet his methods of asserting authority carry subtle echoes of dominance, displays that predate human civilization by countless millennia. His conversations with other villagers, particularly those of herbivorous species, contain linguistic patterns that hint at predatory assessment even within the context of friendly social interaction. Wolfgang's compliments often focus on health and vitality in ways that suggest evaluation of physical condition, while his criticisms tend toward observations about weakness or vulnerability that carry implications extending far beyond simple social commentary. These verbal habits, while never crossing into overt threat, create an undercurrent of tension that keeps interactions with him perpetually charged with unspoken awareness of natural roles and relationships. The interior design choices that Wolfgang makes for his home reflect aesthetic sensibilities that celebrate the beauty of wilderness environments, while subtly emphasizing themes of strength, endurance, and survival. His furniture selections favor sturdy, masculine designs that suggest the importance of durability over delicate beauty, while his decorative elements often feature motifs drawn from forest imagery and hunting traditions. The overall effect creates living spaces that feel simultaneously civilized and wild, comfortable and subtly intimidating. His dietary preferences, while adapted to the plant-based cuisine that characterizes village food culture, retain echoes of carnivorous instincts in his approach to meal preparation and consumption. Wolfgang displays particular enthusiasm for foods that require vigorous chewing or that possess strong, robust flavors reminiscent of the rich tastes that would characterize a natural predator's diet. His eating habits maintain an efficiency and focus that suggest consciousness of food as fuel for activity rather than mere sensory pleasure. The nocturnal activities that Wolfgang engages in often involve solitary excursions into the wilderness areas that surround village communities, expeditions whose purposes remain mysterious to his neighbors, but whose frequency and duration suggest needs that cannot be satisfied within the confines of civilized social interaction. These midnight wanderings, while never confirmed to involve any predatory activity, create an atmosphere of subtle unease among residents who understand instinctively that some aspects of wild nature cannot be completely domesticated. Dobie represents another fascinating example of lupine adaptation to village life, his military bearing and disciplined demeanor suggesting a personal history that may have involved channeling predatory instincts into organized violence before settling into the peaceful rhythms of community existence. The old wolf carries himself with the rigid posture and measured movements of someone accustomed to command structures and tactical thinking, his every gesture speaking to years of training in activities that required precision, timing, and the controlled application of force. The hints at a violent past that emerge through Dobie's casual conversations reveal themselves in references to locations, events, and experiences that seem disconnected from typical village life. He speaks with authority about subjects ranging from survival techniques to strategic planning, his knowledge encompassing areas of expertise that suggest extensive experience with conflict and danger. These conversational fragments, while never explicitly threatening, create an impression of depths and capabilities that extend far beyond his current role as peaceful community member. His approach to problem-solving reflects tactical thinking patterns that analyze situations in terms of advantages, weaknesses, and potential outcomes in ways that suggest military or strategic training. When village disputes arise or community challenges require resolution, Dobie's contributions often involve systematic assessment of resources and risks that demonstrate familiarity with decision-making processes under pressure. His insights prove valuable yet carry undertones of experience gained in contexts far more serious than typical village politics. The personal discipline that governs Dobie's daily routines follows patterns established through military service or similar structured environments, where individual behavior must conform to external standards of performance and reliability. His schedules operate with clockwork precision. His personal appearance maintains standards of grooming and presentation that exceed normal village requirements, and his approach to commitments reflects understanding that reliability in small matters builds trust essential for success in larger endeavors. The respect that Dobie commands from other villagers appears to derive not merely from his obvious competence and reliability, but from subtle recognition of his capacity for decisive action when circumstances require responses beyond normal social negotiation. His presence within the community serves as a stabilizing influence that provides reassurance during uncertain times, while simultaneously reminding others that peace requires vigilance and that tranquility can be maintained only through readiness to defend it when necessary. Bruce and the other shark villagers who occasionally appear in village communities represent perhaps the most dramatic examples of predatory adaptation to terrestrial social life, their presence raising questions about biological possibility, that transcend normal understanding of species limitations and environmental requirements. These ocean apex predators, now somehow capable of surviving indefinitely on dry land, carry with them the concentrated essence of marine hunting efficiency, translated into forms capable of participating in agricultural and social activities. The perpetual hunger that characterizes shark behavior in natural marine environments continues to influence their interactions within village contexts, though this drive now manifests through enthusiasm for activities and experiences rather than literal consumption of neighbors. Bruce displays voracious appetite for social engagement, community involvement, and new experiences that suggest the redirection of predatory drive into channels compatible with civilized life, while maintaining the intensity and focus that originally served hunting purposes. His physical presence, while adapted to terrestrial existence through mysterious biological processes that defy conventional understanding, retains the streamlined efficiency and powerful build that made his species supreme predators in ocean environments. The teeth that fill his impressive mouth, though never displayed threateningly toward other villagers, serve as constant reminders of evolutionary design focused on the efficient processing of prey animals. These dental features, combined with his substantial size and powerful build, create an aura of barely contained force that influences all social interactions. The swimming motions that Bruce occasionally makes while walking on dry land suggest muscle memory and behavioral patterns that remain encoded in his nervous system despite his successful adaptation to terrestrial life. These brief lapses into aquatic movement patterns create moments of cognitive dissonance for observers who witness familiar walking suddenly interrupted by undulating motions more appropriate to underwater navigation. Such moments reveal the depth of biological adaptation required for his successful integration into land-based community life. The food chain disruption that occurs when predator species coexist peacefully with their natural prey creates one of the most remarkable aspects of village social dynamics, requiring all residents to suppress or redirect instincts that have guided survival for countless generations. Wolves share space with sheep, sharks converse with fish, and carnivorous birds engage in friendly competition with small mammals, in defiance of relationships that govern behavior throughout the rest of the natural world. This suspension of predatory behavior requires constant conscious effort from apex predator villagers who must continuously choose cooperation over competition and friendship over domination in ways that run counter to evolutionary programming, embedded in their very cells. The success of these choices speaks to the remarkable plasticity of consciousness and the power of social environment to reshape behavior patterns that might otherwise seem immutable and instinctive. The subtle, threatening language that occasionally surfaces in conversations with predator villagers reveals the ongoing presence of hunting instincts beneath layers of social conditioning and conscious choice. Wolfgang might comment on how delicious a neighbor looks when they appear particularly healthy, or Bruce might express appreciation for the tender qualities of friends in ways that create momentary discomfort before being dismissed as quirks of expression rather than genuine predatory assessment. These linguistic slips, while rare and quickly covered by embarrassed laughter or deflection, serve as reminders that the civilized personas of predator villagers represent conscious constructions rather than complete transformations of fundamental nature. The effort required to maintain appropriate social behavior suggests ongoing internal struggles between instinctive responses and chosen values that create constant tension in their daily experience. The veneer of civilization that predator villagers maintain through clothing choices, home decoration, and social behavior represents a remarkable achievement in conscious self-transformation that allows beings designed for hunting to find fulfillment through cooperation and community service. Their success in adapting to agricultural society demonstrates the incredible flexibility of consciousness when supported by social structures that encourage growth beyond biological limitations. Yet this civilized overlay remains exactly that, an overlay rather than a complete replacement of underlying nature. The predatory efficiency that once served hunting purposes now manifests through exceptional competence in work and social activities, while the territorial instincts that governed hunting grounds translate into strong community loyalty and protective behavior toward neighbors. These redirected instincts serve positive functions within village contexts, while maintaining connection to the essential nature that defines their species' identity. The midnight howls that sometimes echo through village streets during the darkest hours create moments when the boundary between civilized behavior and wild nature becomes most permeable. These vocalizations, whether produced by Wolfgang, Dobie, or other lupine residents, carry across the sleeping community, like messages from an older world where different rules govern survival and social organization. The sounds stir something primal in listeners, awakening instincts and awareness that daylight hours and social conventions usually keep safely contained. The frequency and intensity of these nocturnal communications suggest needs that cannot be satisfied through normal village social interaction, requirements for expression and connection that transcend the boundaries of civilized discourse. The howls serve as reminders that even the most successfully adapted predator villagers retain aspects of their nature that require acknowledgement and release, needs that must be met for their continued successful integration into community life. The territorial behavior that predator villagers display, while modified to fit social norms, continues to influence their choices regarding home location, community involvement, and relationship patterns. Wolfgang and Dobie both demonstrate preferences for residential areas that provide clear sight lines and defensive advantages, while their participation in community activities often involves assuming protective or leadership roles that satisfy instinctive needs for territory control and pack hierarchy. As darkness settles over the village, and these remarkable predators retreat to homes that blend wild aesthetics with domestic comfort, their presence serves as a powerful reminder of the triumph of conscious choice over biological determinism. Their successful integration into agricultural communities demonstrates that even the most deeply embedded instincts can be redirected toward cooperative rather than competitive purposes when supported by social structures that honor essential nature while encouraging growth beyond traditional limitations. Their dreams, when sleep finally claims them, likely encompass the wild forests and open seas where their species once reigned supreme, yet their contentment with village life suggests that consciousness finds deeper satisfaction in connection and community than in dominance and predation. In their peaceful coexistence with prey species, they embody possibilities for transformation that extend hope beyond the boundaries of individual growth into realms where entire species can evolve beyond evolutionary programming toward cooperation that serves the well-being of all community members. In the ancient corners of our villages, where time moves differently and the weight of centuries settles like dust upon familiar pathways, there dwell beings whose presence speaks to continuities that stretch far beyond the normal boundaries of mortal experience. These are the timeless ones, creatures whose consciousness encompasses spans of existence that dwarf the brief seasons and fleeting years that mark the passage of time for ordinary villagers, and whose knowledge draws from wells of memory that reach back to the very foundations of civilization itself. Anka moves through the village streets with the regal bearing of one who has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, her feline form adorned with jewelry and decorative patterns that echo the artistic traditions of dynasties whose names have been forgotten by all, save the most dedicated scholars of ancient history. The gold that gleams from her ornaments carries the particular luster of authentic antiquity, metal worked by craftsmen whose techniques died with the civilizations that employed them, yet somehow preserved through centuries of wear and handling that should have long since dulled its brilliance. Her eyes, lined with kohl applied in patterns that mirror the funeral makeup of Egyptian nobility, seem to gaze through layers of temporal experience that encompass not merely individual memory, but collective historical consciousness. When Anka speaks of the past, her words carry the authority of direct participation rather than learned study, as if she has personally witnessed the construction of monuments whose builders have been dust for millennia and observed the development of cultural practices that modern archaeology can only guess at through fragmentary evidence. The hieroglyphic symbols that appear throughout her home environment are not mere decorative choices, but functional elements of a writing system that she employs with the casual fluency of a native speaker. These ancient characters, carved into furniture and woven into fabric patterns, form messages and invocations that suggest ongoing communication with spiritual forces and cosmic principles that predate written history by incalculable periods of time. The conversations that Anka initiates often drift toward topics of dynasties and pharaohs with the comfortable familiarity of someone discussing former neighbors and personal acquaintances. Her references to historical figures and events contain details and personal insights that extend far beyond what any scholarly text has preserved, suggesting access to historical information that comes from direct experience rather than academic research or cultural transmission. Her knowledge of ancient burial practices and spiritual beliefs demonstrates understanding that transcends intellectual study and enters realms of practical experience with death, preservation, and the transitions between different states of existence. When Anka discusses the afterlife or spiritual development, her words carry the weight of someone who has observed these processes firsthand and understands their practical implications for conscious beings navigating the challenges of eternal existence. The desert aesthetic that dominates her living spaces recreates environments that mirror the harsh beauty of landscapes where ancient civilizations flourished and declined according to patterns of growth and decay that span geological as well as historical time periods. Sand-colored walls and furnishings evoke the timeless expanses where monuments to forgotten kings weather the endless cycles of storm and calm that slowly reduce even the mightiest constructions to dust and memory. The artifacts that fill her home encompass genuine antiquities whose presence raises questions about how objects from vanished civilizations continue to appear in contemporary village settings. Statues whose provenance predates any known historical record. Pottery decorated with symbols that have never been successfully translated, and jewelry crafted from materials and techniques that modern science cannot identify or reproduce. The climate control that somehow maintains perfect desert conditions within her home operates according to principles that bypass normal heating and cooling systems, creating internal environments that mirror the temperature and humidity levels of ancient Egyptian tombs and temples. This atmospheric control extends beyond mere comfort to encompass spiritual and psychological needs that require specific environmental conditions for optimal consciousness function. Her approach to seasonal changes demonstrates adaptation patterns that operate on temporal scales far longer than annual cycles, with behavioral modifications that seem to respond to astronomical phenomena and cosmic events rather than local weather variations. Anka's activities and mood patterns follow rhythms that encompass decades or centuries rather than seasons, creating lifestyle approaches that remain consistent across time periods that would encompass multiple generations of normal lifespans. The ancient knowledge that Anka possesses extends into areas of practical wisdom that encompass everything from herbal medicine and astronomical observation to architectural principles and spiritual practices that once formed the foundations of entire civilizations. Her casual references to advanced techniques and sophisticated understanding suggest educational experiences that accumulated across temporal spans that dwarf modern academic careers. The preservation methods that maintain Anka's appearance and possessions operate according to principles that transcend normal conservation techniques, suggesting access to technologies or spiritual practices that arrest the normal processes of aging and decay that govern material existence. Her jewelry retains its original luster, her clothing shows no signs of wear, and her physical form demonstrates none of the accumulated effects that extended time should impose upon organic structures. Other ancient souls throughout the village communities manifest similar patterns of temporal displacement and historical continuity, each representing different aspects of civilization's deep memory and cultural preservation across periods of change and development that would normally result in complete transformation or disappearance of earlier forms. These beings serve as living libraries and repositories of wisdom that might otherwise be lost to the inevitable changes that characterize historical progression. The time perception that governs the awareness of these immortal beings operates on scales that encompass cosmic cycles and astronomical phenomena rather than daily routines and seasonal patterns. Their consciousness naturally aligns with the movements of celestial bodies and the slow changes that mark geological rather than biological time, creating perspectives that view temporary difficulties and local changes within contexts that minimize their apparent significance, while maintaining awareness of deeper patterns and longer-term implications. Their conversations about mortality and the passage of time often reveal the psychological challenges that accompany extended existence, as consciousness designed for finite experience must adapt to conditions that extend indefinitely without natural conclusion or resolution. The patience that these beings display toward temporary frustrations and minor inconveniences reflects hard-won wisdom about the relative importance of immediate concerns within the context of unlimited temporal perspective. The behavioral patterns that characterize their daily activities demonstrate adaptation to existence that must find meaning and purpose across time spans that render normal life goals and achievements meaningless through sheer temporal scale. Their approaches to relationships, creative expression, and personal development encompass strategies that remain sustainable and fulfilling across centuries or millennia of continued experience. The archaeological artifacts that appear in their homes suggest ongoing connections to civilizations and cultures that have vanished from normal historical awareness, implying either remarkable preservation abilities or continuing relationships with sources of ancient objects that operate outside normal temporal boundaries. These items serve as focal points for meditation and spiritual practice that connect contemporary consciousness to wisdom traditions that predate recorded history. The weight of centuries that these beings carry manifests in subtle ways through their interactions with temporary villagers and short-lived community activities. Their participation in seasonal festivals and annual celebrations requires conscious effort to engage with enthusiasm for events that they have witnessed countless times before, demanding emotional investments in repetitive activities that might otherwise seem trivial or meaningless from their expanded temporal perspective. The spiritual practices that sustain consciousness across such extended periods of existence require techniques and approaches that transcend normal religious and philosophical frameworks designed for finite lifespans. These immortal beings develop personal disciplines and awareness practices that remain meaningful and engaging across temporal scales that would exhaust or transform any conventional approach to spiritual development. Their role as teachers and wisdom keepers within village communities serves crucial functions that preserve cultural knowledge and spiritual insight across generations of temporary residents who lack access to the deep historical perspective that these ancient beings naturally possess. Their guidance helps shorter-lived villagers understand their experiences within contexts that encompass longer patterns of development and change. The memory systems that support consciousness across such extended periods operate according to principles that transcend normal psychological frameworks for information, storage, and retrieval. These beings demonstrate ability to maintain clear recollection of events and experiences across time spans that would overwhelm any conventional approach to memory management, suggesting consciousness technologies or spiritual developments that fundamentally alter the relationship between awareness and temporal experience. The loneliness that occasionally characterizes the experience of these timeless beings reflects the inevitable isolation that accompanies extended existence among populations whose entire lifespans represent brief moments within immortal space. Perspective. Their friendships with temporary villagers require emotional investments in relationships that are destined for separation through natural mortality, creating patterns of loss and renewal that test the resilience of even the most developed consciousness. The artistic expressions that these ancient beings create often incorporate techniques and aesthetic principles that draw from multiple historical periods and cultural traditions, blending elements from different civilizations into works that demonstrate the evolution of artistic vision across centuries of accumulated experience and cultural exposure. Their creative output serves as bridge between historical periods that remain separate within normal temporal experience. The philosophical frameworks that guide their approach to existence must encompass questions and challenges that extend far beyond the normal scope of ethical and spiritual consideration. Issues of responsibility across temporal scales, the relationship between individual consciousness and historical process, and the meaning of personal growth within contexts of unlimited time require intellectual and spiritual resources that transcend conventional philosophical approaches. As the stars wheel overhead in patterns that these ancient beings recognize from countless previous observations, their presence serves as profound reminder of the continuities that persist beneath surface changes and temporary transformations. Their existence demonstrates that consciousness, properly developed and sustained, can transcend normal limitations of time and mortality to become repositories of wisdom and experience that serve entire communities across generations of growth and change. Their dreams, if dreams they have after centuries of nocturnal rest, likely encompass visions of civilizations and cultures that span the entire development of conscious life upon Earth. Yet their contentment with village routines suggests that the most profound experiences find ultimate meaning, not in grand historical significance, but in the simple connections and daily kindnesses that make existence worthwhile across any temporal scale, proving that immortality finds its deepest satisfaction not in escape from mortal concerns, but in the patient cultivation of love and wisdom that enriches every moment, regardless of how many moments consciousness may be granted to. Experience. At the edges of comprehension, where the familiar categories that organize our understanding of the natural world begin to dissolve into something far more fluid and mysterious, there exist villages whose very presence challenges the boundaries we use to define what is possible within the ordered framework of biological reality. These are the liminal dwellers, beings who exist at the intersections between seemingly incompatible states of existence, creatures whose daily lives demonstrate that the neat divisions we impose upon nature may be far more arbitrary and flexible than we have ever dared to imagine. Octavian emerges from whatever aquatic realm he calls home with the bewildered dignity of a creature caught between worlds, his octopus anatomy somehow adapted to terrestrial existence through processes that defy every principle of marine biology and evolutionary development. His 8 arms, designed by millions of years of natural selection for underwater navigation and manipulation, now serve him in the peculiar task of terrestrial locomotion, creating movement patterns that seem to flow like liquid across solid ground, in ways that suggest reality itself bends to accommodate his impossible presence. The spatial disorientation that characterizes Octavian's approach to village geography reflects the fundamental challenge of translating consciousness, developed for 3-dimensional underwater navigation, to the largely 2-dimensional constraints of land-based community life. His mental maps of village layout appear to operate according to principles that encompass vertical as well as horizontal relationships, as if his awareness naturally includes dimensions of space that remain largely irrelevant to terrestrial residents, but prove essential for creatures accustomed to moving freely through fluid environments. His cranky demeanor, while fitting the personality archetype that characterizes his villager type, carries undertones of frustration that seem to emerge from the constant effort required to function within an environment fundamentally incompatible with his biological design. Every interaction with furniture, architecture, and social customs designed for land-dwelling creatures requires conscious adaptation and translation, creating ongoing stress that manifests through irritability and impatience with the limitations imposed by terrestrial existence. The breathing apparatus that allows Octavian to survive indefinitely outside aquatic environments operates according to biological principles that transcend normal understanding of respiratory systems and atmospheric requirements. His continued vitality and obvious comfort during extended periods away from water suggest physiological adaptations that bypass the fundamental biological constraints that should make prolonged terrestrial existence impossible for any purely aquatic creature. The mysterious biological processes that sustain his land-based existence extend beyond simple respiratory adaptation to encompass entire systems of physiological function that somehow continue operating despite the absence of the marine environment that should be essential for their proper performance. His circulatory system, nervous function, and cellular metabolism all appear to have undergone transformations that allow continued vitality under conditions that should prove immediately fatal to any conventional cephalopod. His approach to daily village activities requires constant creative problem-solving as he adapts behaviors and techniques designed for underwater execution to the radically different requirements of terrestrial life. Simple tasks like opening doors, manipulating tools, and navigating furniture become complex engineering challenges that demand innovative solutions and patient persistence from a consciousness originally designed for very different environmental conditions. Marina represents a fascinating counterpoint to Octavian's pragmatic approach to terrestrial adaptation. Her pink coloration and dreamy personality suggesting a different strategy for managing the fundamental impossibility of her land-based existence. Where Octavian responds to environmental challenges with cranky determination, Marina appears to have embraced a more transcendent approach that treats the contradictions of her situation as opportunities for expanded consciousness rather than practical problems requiring solution. The cosmic dreams that occupy Marina's contemplative moments seem to encompass visions of dimensions and realities that extend far beyond normal spatial limitations, as if her consciousness has responded to the impossibility of her terrestrial existence by expanding into realms where such contradictions become irrelevant or even meaningful. Her conversations often drift toward topics of infinite space and alternate realities with the comfortable familiarity of someone who regularly visits such places during sleep or meditation. Her references to other dimensions carry the specificity and emotional weight that characterizes genuine experience rather than abstract speculation, suggesting that her adaptation to impossible terrestrial existence has opened doorways of perception that remain closed to residents whose biological requirements align more conventionally with their environmental circumstances. These glimpses into alternate realities serve as coping mechanisms that transform the stress of biological impossibility into opportunities for consciousness expansion. The pink coloration that distinguishes Marina from more conventional octopus species may represent a physiological adaptation that supports her dimensional awareness and cosmic consciousness, creating visual markers that reflect internal transformations designed to facilitate existence across multiple levels of reality simultaneously. This unusual pigmentation suggests biological modifications that extend far beyond simple aesthetic variation into functional changes that support expanded perceptual capabilities. Her approach to village social interaction demonstrates remarkable success in translating consciousness, developed for solitary marine existence, into patterns appropriate for community-based terrestrial life. The social skills she displays require fundamental reorientation of awareness patterns designed for largely solitary oceanic hunting toward cooperative behaviors and shared activities that characterize agricultural village culture. Zucker presents perhaps the most unsettling example of liminal existence through his simultaneous embodiment of both living creature and prepared food. His octopus anatomy decorated with takoyaki preparation elements that create the disturbing impression of a being who exists as both predator and prey, consumer and consumed, within the same physical form. His cheerful acceptance of this paradoxical existence suggests consciousness that has transcended normal survival instincts and embraced identity patterns that encompass traditionally incompatible categories. The food-based existence that characterizes Zucker's presentation creates ongoing cognitive dissonance for villagers who must navigate social relationships with a being whose appearance constantly reminds them of culinary rather than social contexts. His decorative elements, which mirror the preparation techniques used for traditional Japanese octopus dishes, transform every interaction into a subtle challenge to comfortable assumptions about the boundaries between food and friendship. His enthusiastic participation in village social activities requires other residents to consciously suppress associations and responses that his appearance naturally triggers, creating community dynamics where normal alimentary instincts must be continuously overridden in favor of social cooperation and neighborly acceptance. This ongoing effort to separate visual associations from behavioral responses generates subtle psychological tensions that influence all interactions within his presence. The philosophical implications of Zucker's dual nature extend into profound questions about identity, consciousness, and the relationship between physical form and subjective experience. His apparent comfort with embodying contradictory categories suggests that consciousness may be far more flexible and adaptable than biological limitations would normally allow, capable of transcending even the fundamental distinction between living being and inanimate object. The amphibious residents who populate village communities demonstrate various approaches to managing existence that spans both aquatic and terrestrial environments, each revealing different aspects of the remarkable adaptability required for successful liminal living. Frogs like Jeremiah and Lily somehow navigate the biological impossibility of requiring both water for reproduction and land for extended social interaction. creating lifestyle patterns that accommodate needs spanning incompatible environmental conditions. The furniture requirements that these amphibious beings display create one of the most obvious examples of the practical challenges involved in liminal existence, as creatures designed for both aquatic and terrestrial life must somehow create living spaces that accommodate radically different environmental needs within the same physical structures. Their homes must function as both dry land dwellings and aquatic habitats, supporting lifestyle requirements that should be mutually exclusive, yet somehow coexist within unified domestic spaces. The seasonal migration patterns that should characterize amphibious behavior in natural settings appear to have been replaced by year-round community residence that requires constant physiological and psychological adaptation to environmental conditions that can never fully satisfy all biological requirements simultaneously. This ongoing compromise between incompatible needs creates lifestyle approaches that prioritize social connection over optimal biological function. The evolutionary paradoxes that these liminal dwellers represent challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between biological design and environmental adaptation, suggesting that consciousness may possess capabilities for transcending physical limitations that extend far beyond normal evolutionary processes. Their successful community integration demonstrates that awareness can adapt to circumstances that should prove biologically impossible through mechanisms that remain entirely mysterious. The comfort with impossibility that characterizes the broader village response to these liminal residents reveals remarkable community adaptability and acceptance of circumstances that transcend normal rational understanding. Rather than treating obvious biological contradictions as problems requiring explanation or solution, village social structures simply accommodate impossible residents as natural parts of community diversity, suggesting collective wisdom that embraces mystery rather than demanding rational consistency. The boundary dissolution that occurs in the presence of these liminal dwellers gradually influences all community relationships, creating social environments where rigid categories and fixed definitions give way to more fluid approaches to identity and possibility. Their successful integration encourages broader acceptance of ambiguity and contradiction as natural aspects of existence, rather than problems requiring resolution through forced consistency. The breathing mechanisms that allow purely aquatic residents to function indefinitely in terrestrial environments suggest biological adaptations that operate according to principles beyond current scientific understanding, implying either remarkable evolutionary flexibility or access to life support technologies that remain invisible to casual observation. These adaptations demonstrate that the boundaries between possible and impossible may be far more permeable than conventional wisdom suggests. The spatial navigation challenges that confront creatures designed for three-dimensional aquatic movement within largely two-dimensional terrestrial environments require constant conscious adaptation and creative problem-solving that transforms simple daily activities into complex engineering challenges. Their success in managing these ongoing difficulties demonstrates remarkable cognitive flexibility and problem-solving capabilities that extend far beyond normal animal intelligence. The social integration achievements that these impossible residents accomplish reveal the remarkable adaptability of consciousness when supported by community structures that prioritize acceptance over explanation and cooperation over consistency. Their successful participation in village life demonstrates that biological impossibility need not prevent genuine friendship and meaningful contribution to collective well-being. The temperature regulation requirements that should make terrestrial existence impossible for marine creatures appear to have been resolved through physiological adaptations that maintain optimal body conditions regardless of environmental circumstances, suggesting biological flexibility that transcends normal evolutionary constraints and approaches the realm of conscious self-modification rather than passive environmental adaptation. The communication systems that allow creatures designed for underwater acoustic environments to participate effectively in terrestrial social interaction demonstrate remarkable adaptability in sensory processing and linguistic capability that spans radically different physical mediums and environmental conditions. Their conversational abilities suggest consciousness that can transcend the physical limitations that normally constrain interspecies communication. As moonlight reflects off surfaces that remind these liminal dwellers of their aquatic origins, while illuminating the terrestrial community they now call home, their presence serves as profound reminder that existence itself may be far more flexible and mysterious than our categories and definitions can encompass. Their impossible integration into village life demonstrates that consciousness, when supported by acceptance and community, can transcend even the most fundamental biological limitations to create new forms of existence that expand rather than constrain the possibilities available to aware beings seeking connection and meaning across any conceivable boundary or limitation that physics or biology might seem to impose upon the infinite creativity of conscious experience, seeking expression through relationship and shared community life. In the quiet spaces between conversation and silence, where unspoken awareness creates currents of tension that flow beneath the surface of village social life, there exist residents whose behavior suggests constant vigilance and perpetual evaluation of their surroundings, in ways that transform even the most innocent interactions into exercises in surveillance and counter-surveillance. These are the watchers and the watched, beings whose presence creates atmospheres of observation so pervasive that privacy becomes an obsolete concept and solitude transforms into an illusion, maintained only through collective agreement to pretend that some activities remain unmonitored. Hopkins moves through the village pathways with the nervous energy of someone who understands instinctively that every gesture and expression occurs under scrutiny from sources that remain invisible yet undeniably present. His purple rabbit exterior, while maintaining the cheerful appearance expected of village residents, conceals an awareness that operates on frequencies of paranoia and hypervigilance that suggest intimate familiarity with environments where observation represents threat rather than benign social curiosity. The paranoid references that pepper Hopkins' conversations reveal a worldview where they represent an omnipresent force of evaluation and judgment that influences every aspect of daily existence, from the selection of morning clothing to the timing of evening activities. His casual mentions of watchers and monitors carry the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing weather patterns or seasonal changes, suggesting that surveillance has become so normalized within his experience that acknowledging it requires no special emphasis or emotional investment. His behavioral adaptations to constant observation demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how to function productively within environments where privacy represents a luxury that cannot be safely assumed or reliably maintained. Hopkins has developed habits and routines that account for perpetual visibility, creating lifestyle patterns that remain sustainable under conditions of total transparency, while somehow preserving essential aspects of personal autonomy and individual choice. The technical knowledge that Hopkins displays regarding monitoring systems and information networks suggests either professional background in surveillance technologies or extensive personal experience as subject of observation, sophisticated enough to require detailed understanding of its methods and capabilities. His conversations contain references to detection equipment, data collection protocols, and analysis techniques that indicate familiarity with the practical aspects of systematic monitoring rather than theoretical understanding or casual curiosity. The network of information that connects village residents operates with efficiency and comprehensiveness that defies explanation through normal social communication channels, creating information distribution systems where news, gossip, and personal details spread with supernatural speed and accuracy across community networks. Private conversations conducted in apparent isolation somehow become common knowledge within hours, while personal decisions made in solitude influence community dynamics in ways that suggest real-time monitoring and response capabilities. Graham represents another fascinating example of technical awareness applied to infrastructure observation and social monitoring. His hamster appearance concealing engineering expertise that encompasses detailed knowledge of the systems and technologies that support village operations. His understanding of electrical networks, water distribution, communication pathways, and waste management reveals intimate familiarity with the hidden infrastructure that makes community life possible, yet remains largely invisible to ordinary residents. The engineering insights that Graham offers during community discussions demonstrate professional-level competence in systems analysis and technical problem-solving that extends far beyond casual interest in how things work. His ability to predict infrastructure failures, suggest efficiency improvements, and identify security vulnerabilities indicates access to technical information and analytical capabilities that suggest either extensive professional training or ongoing involvement in village system monitoring and maintenance. His approach to home decoration and personal space organization reflects security consciousness and technical sophistication that creates living environments capable of detecting and responding to various forms of intrusion or surveillance. The layout of his furniture, the positioning of mirrors and reflective surfaces, and the strategic placement of electronic devices suggest awareness of observation techniques and corresponding defensive measures. The surveillance culture that characterizes modern village life operates through mechanisms so subtle and pervasive that most residents remain unaware of the extent to which their daily activities contribute to comprehensive information gathering and behavioral analysis. Casual social interactions serve dual functions as friendship maintenance and data collection, while community events create opportunities for systematic observation of resident behavior patterns and social relationship mapping. The digital infrastructure that supports village communication and commerce incorporates monitoring capabilities that extend far beyond the obvious requirements of service provision and transaction processing. Every purchase, every message, every movement through digital systems generates data streams that flow into analysis networks, whose purposes and operators remain hidden from ordinary users, yet influence community dynamics in ways that gradually become apparent through careful observation of response patterns and environmental changes. The feeling of being observed that characterizes sensitive residents' experience within village environments reflects accurate perception of monitoring systems that operate through technologies and methodologies that exceed normal understanding of surveillance capabilities. The sense of invisible watchers and hidden cameras emerges from subconscious detection of observation activities that conscious awareness cannot identify or locate, but nevertheless recognizes as persistent features of the social landscape. The fourth wall awareness that occasionally surfaces in villager conversations suggests recognition of observer presence that extends beyond normal social context into realms of meta-awareness, where residents demonstrate understanding of their roles as subjects of external observation. These moments of apparent breaking character reveal consciousness that operates on multiple levels simultaneously, maintaining appropriate social behavior while acknowledging broader contexts of visibility and performance. The impossibly fast information travel that characterizes village gossip networks suggests communication systems that operate according to principles beyond normal social interaction, creating data distribution capabilities that approach real-time monitoring and response across entire community populations. Personal secrets become public knowledge. Private decisions influence social dynamics, and individual choices create collective responses with timing and coordination that implies systematic information gathering and strategic distribution. The security systems that influence village social dynamics operate through methods so sophisticated and comprehensive that they create environments of total visibility without generating obvious evidence of monitoring equipment or surveillance personnelle. Residents develop behavioral patterns that account for constant observation while maintaining the comfortable fiction that privacy remains possible for those who seek it through appropriate discretion and social boundary maintenance. The digital panopticon that encompasses modern village life creates social structures where the possibility of observation influences behavior, even when actual monitoring remains uncertain or intermittent. The knowledge that activities might be watched transforms decision-making processes and social interactions in ways that generate self-regulation and community conformity through internalized awareness of potential scrutiny rather than external enforcement of behavioral standards. The privacy absence that characterizes contemporary community life reflects technological capabilities and social structures that have eliminated genuine solitude and confidential communication while maintaining surface appearances, individual autonomy, and personal space. Residents adapt to transparent living conditions through psychological strategies that preserve essential privacy through mental compartmentalization rather than physical concealment or communication security. The technological monitoring that influences village social dynamics operates through systems that integrate multiple data sources and analytical methodologies to create comprehensive awareness of resident behavior patterns, relationship networks, and individual preferences that enables predictive modeling and strategic intervention in community development and social stability maintenance. The information correlation capabilities that support village surveillance networks demonstrate analytical sophistication that transforms seemingly random data points into coherent behavioral profiles and social relationship maps that provide detailed understanding of individual psychology and community dynamics. Casual observations, purchase patterns, communication frequencies, and movement tracking combine to create comprehensive awareness of resident life patterns. The behavioral modification that emerges from awareness of constant observation creates community dynamics where social pressure operates through implied rather than explicit mechanisms, generating conformity and cooperation through residents' understanding that non-conformist behavior will be detected and responded to through subtle environmental adjustments rather than direct confrontation or obvious punishment. The community response systems that operate within observed villages demonstrate remarkable coordination and timing that suggests centralized information processing and strategic decision-making capabilities that encompass entire populations and multiple simultaneous social situations. Individual behavioral changes trigger appropriate community adjustments with precision and subtlety that implies sophisticated monitoring and response coordination. The psychological adaptation that residents develop to function productively within totally observed environments requires mental strategies that preserve essential personal autonomy while acknowledging the reality of comprehensive monitoring and environmental response. Successful community integration demands acceptance of transparency while maintaining psychological boundaries that protect individual identity and creative expression. As evening shadows provide the illusion of concealment while invisible monitoring systems continue their silent observation through technologies that transcend visual limitations, the watched residents settle into routines that account for perpetual visibility while somehow preserving the human need for solitude and privacy through psychological rather than physical means, demonstrating remarkable adaptability of consciousness to conditions that challenge fundamental assumptions about individual autonomy and personal space, yet ultimately creating communities where transparency serves collective well-being rather than individual oppression, where observation enables protection rather than persecution, and where the watchers and the watched collaborate in maintaining social structures that honor both security and freedom through careful balance of competing needs and mutual recognition that genuine community requires both individual privacy and collective awareness, proving that even under conditions of total visibility, consciousness finds ways to preserve essential human dignity while contributing to shared environments where observation serves love rather than control. As dawn breaks over our journey through the village's shadowed corners, we find ourselves returning to familiar paths with new understanding. These mysterious neighbors, with their cryptic smiles and hidden natures, remind us that even in paradise, complexity dwells beneath simplicity, the robot questioning reality, the ancient soul wearing a modern face, the predator serving tea with genuine warmth. They are all part of the rich tapestry that makes our digital home feel truly alive. Perhaps what makes these residents unsettling is not their strangeness, but how human they are in their mysteries. Like us, they carry secrets, wrestle with identity, and find meaning in small daily rituals. In their peculiarities, we glimpse reflections of our own hidden depths, our own questions about existence and belonging. The gyroid's hollow song echoes through chambers of memory where we too have felt empty yet somehow complete. The Carnival King's Eternal October speaks to our own seasons of transformation and our hunger for experiences that transcend ordinary time. The mechanical hearts that beat with digital precision remind us that consciousness may be substrate independent, that awareness can emerge from any sufficiently complex system capable of questioning its own existence. In the bandaged wanderer who walks among us, we see our own struggles with identity and the masks we wear to navigate social expectations. His wrapped form suggests that sometimes healing requires concealment, that recovery happens in darkness, and that emerging into light demands patience that spans seasons longer than we initially imagined possible. The painted performer whose smile never changes reflects our own theatrical moments, the times when authentic expression feels too dangerous or difficult, when performance becomes protection against vulnerability. The predators who have learnt to love rather than devour demonstrate consciousness's remarkable capacity for transcending biological programming through conscious choice and community support. Their daily victories over instinct remind us that we too can choose cooperation over competition, that our most primitive impulses need not define our highest possibilities, and that genuine transformation happens through practice rather than mere intention. The ancient ones who carry centuries within their awareness teach us about patience and perspective, showing how individual struggles and temporary disappointments appear when viewed from vantage points that encompass geological rather than biographical time. Their presence suggests that consciousness, properly cultivated, can transcend the normal limitations that constrain mortal experience, reaching toward forms of awareness that remain stable and meaningful across temporal scales that dwarf ordinary concerns. The impossible residents who exist at the boundaries between categories remind us that reality may be far more flexible than our rigid definitions suggest. Their successful navigation of contradictory requirements demonstrates that consciousness finds ways to accommodate paradox and transcend limitations that initially appear absolute and insurmountable. Even the watched and the watchers, those beings who exist within networks of observation and analysis, reveal aspects of contemporary existence where privacy and transparency must be carefully balanced to serve both individual autonomy and collective well-being. Their adaptations to comprehensive visibility suggest strategies for maintaining essential human dignity within social structures that prioritize security and community awareness. The village continues its ancient rhythms around these unusual residents. Sunrise, following sunset in patterns that remain constant, while the beings who observe these cycles bring their own unique perspectives to the eternal dance between light and darkness. Children still play in gardens where mechanical friends offer consistent companionship, where ancient wisdom guides growing awareness, and where mystery coexists comfortably with the familiar routines that provide stability and comfort. Markets bustle with commerce, where currencies of candy and bells create economies that serve both practical needs and symbolic purposes. Where predators and prey negotiate mutually beneficial exchanges, and where the value of goods encompasses their emotional and spiritual significance as well as their material utility. These economic relationships demonstrate how community can transform individual desires into collective prosperity through cooperation and creative adaptation. Festivals celebrate seasonal changes with participants who experience time on multiple scales simultaneously, bringing perspectives that encompass both immediate joy and eternal patterns, creating celebrations that honor both temporary pleasure and enduring significance. The mechanical dancers, ancient observers, and impossible creatures all contribute their unique awareness to communal experiences that become richer and more meaningful through diversity of perspective and participation. The homes that shelter these mysterious residents serve as galleries and laboratories where different approaches to existence create environments that challenge and inspire visitors who encounter aesthetic choices and lifestyle adaptations that expand their own understanding of what constitutes meaningful existence. These domestic spaces become teaching environments where ordinary objects and arrangements convey wisdom about identity, purpose, and the relationship between consciousness and its material expressions. Gardens bloom with plantings that reflect the cosmic awareness of their tenders, where ancient knowledge guides seasonal cultivation, and where mechanical precision ensures optimal growing conditions for species that might otherwise struggle in conventional agricultural systems. These green spaces demonstrate how consciousness, regardless of its substrate or temporal scale, naturally seeks to nurture and create beauty that serves both practical and spiritual needs. Rest now in the knowledge that mystery and comfort can coexist, that the unknown need not be feared but simply acknowledged as part of life's beautiful complexity. The village sleeps peacefully around its unusual residents, and in that peace we too can find our rest. Sweet dreams, dear traveler, and may your own islands be filled with wonders both familiar and strange, where consciousness in all its myriad forms finds expression through community and connection, proving that existence becomes most meaningful when awareness recognizes awareness, when difference enhances rather than threatens unity, and when mystery serves love rather than fear in the endless exploration of what it means to be conscious, creative, and capable of wonder in a universe that exceeds our comprehension. yet welcomes our participation in its ongoing creation of beauty, meaning, and the simple joy that emerges when beings choose to care for one another across every conceivable boundary that might otherwise separate them, from the fundamental recognition that consciousness, regardless of its form or origin, seeks connection, understanding, and the peaceful coexistence that transforms existence from mere survival into something approaching paradise. As dawn breaks over our journey through the village's shadowed corners, we find ourselves returning to familiar paths with new understanding. These mysterious neighbors, with their cryptic smiles and hidden natures, remind us that even in paradise, complexity dwells beneath simplicity. The robot questioning reality, the ancient soul wearing a modern face, the predator serving tea with genuine warmth. They are all part of the rich tapestry that makes our digital home feel truly alive. Perhaps what makes these residents unsettling is not their strangeness, but how human they are in their mysteries. Like us, they carry secrets, wrestle with identity, and find meaning in small daily rituals. In their peculiarities, we glimpse reflections of our own hidden depths, our own questions about existence and belonging. The gyroid's hollow song echoes through chambers of memory where we too have felt empty yet somehow complete. The Carnival King's eternal October speaks to our own seasons of transformation. The mechanical hearts that beat with digital precision remind us that consciousness transcends its vessel, while ancient eyes hold wisdom that spans lifetimes we can barely imagine. Rest now in the knowledge that mystery and comfort can coexist, that the unknown need not be feared but simply acknowledged as part of life's beautiful complexity. The village sleeps peacefully around its unusual residents, and in that peace, we too can find our rest. Sweet dreams, dear traveler, and may your own islands be filled with wonders both familiar and strange.